Hey, hello. It's time for More Common Knowledge, the show where I take a look at 10 common Magic the Gathering cards, tell you if they're any good in the Pauper format or not. What is our first card of the day? I hope it's a good one. I mean, it is. This is objectively a good card. We've done it before, or we've done this cycle before of these artifact lands. I'll read it really quickly, but we'll not count this one for the day. Thornglint Bridge is an artifact land. It enters tapped, it's indestructible, and it taps for green or white. This one probably less so than the others is playable in Pauper. You'll find the Demir one, the Izzet one, the Ortsov one, the Jund, or not the Jund one, the Gruul one, and the Rakdos one for Jund Wildfire. You see a lot of these lands see a lot of play. This one probably less so. There's fewer artifact heavy decks in Selesnya colors. Not to say that there aren't any, but I would say of the cycle of these cards, this one, maybe the Simic one, maybe it's probably these two that see maybe the least amount of play to my knowledge. Still a good card. These are like nines. They are just that good. Being a dual land, being another artifact that goes on the table, having indestructibility is pretty good. There's a lot to like about these lands. So we're not going to count this one because we've done these lands before. But Thornglint Bridge was a good card. Leaden Mirror is a card that I really like, but it might not necessarily be a good card. We're not going to look at this Scars of Mirrodin. We're going to look at the regular Mirrodin one, which is I mean, hey, don't get me wrong. This Alan Pollock art is also very cool, but it's not the Kev Walker art. Come on. This is one of the most gorgeous cards in my opinion. I think this Cycle of Mirror from the original Mirrodin is one of the best sets of Magic art that I have seen. Silver Mirror, Copper Mirror, Leaden Mirror are all like S tier, and then Iron Mirror and Gold Mirror might also be S tier, and then Iron Mirror I might just put down into like an A tier. But they're all incredible. Leaden Mirror is 2 mana for a 1/1 artifact creature that is a mirror, and you can tap it to add a black. It's a mana dork. And this whole cycle are all 2 mana 1/1s that tap for a different color, and this is the one that taps for black. I like these cards. They're not great, especially when you get to something like Copper Mirror, because then you're just spending 1 extra mana for a Llanowar elf. But they're good. They're fun. They're cute. They're relatively cheap. They ramp you. They're good cards. What do you want from me? I love these little guys, and I wish they would see more play. I wish we lived in a world where these guys could see a lot of play. We don't live in that world. But man, what if we did? Score wise, it is still a mana dork that blocks and attacks whenever you need it to. I can't bring myself to give this a bad score. I think I can go with a 3. Man, look at that art. All right, we gotta move ahead though. Candle Trap is a single white mana for an enchantment aura that enchants a creature. Enchanted creature has Defender and prevent all combat damage that would be dealt by enchanted creature. It also has Coven. For 2 and a white, you can sacrifice this aura and exile the enchanted creature, but activate only if you control 3 or more creatures with different powers. So if you have like a power 1, a power 2, and a power 3 creature, then you have Coven and are able to use that ability. This is not good. Like, this feels like a very blue card. Blue does a lot of enchantment auras that will stop the opponent's creatures. I guess the preventing combat damage part is pretty white, but I mean, I know white's like the color of pacifism and stuff, but we've just seen enough cards at this point from white that will exile the whole creature. Just get them off the table. Even if it's like one of these enchantments that exiles, like a Journey to Nowhere that exiles the creature under it. But white also just has a lot of really good removal that doesn't need this. Like this is the kind of removal blue gets because blue isn't cool enough to get good removal. So I don't know why white wants to slum it by trying to do some removal that feels very clearly blue. I don't like this. I don't like this. I don't like giving the opponent's creature defender. It still allows them to tap that creature if it has abilities. It still allows them to block with that creature even if they're not doing damage back to your creature. It still potentially stops a lot of damage. It doesn't necessarily solve your problems, and it also just stalls the game instead of removing the threat so you can get in with damage. And if you're playing a white deck, a white Greenie, or some kind of go wide, or the Pack Beast deck, or have just Leonardo that can swing in for big, they still have a guy with Defender that can block. I don't like that. Even with the blue cards that do this, I prefer the ones that will tap the creature and keep it tapped, so it functionally isn't able to block or use its abilities if those abilities are tap abilities, activated abilities. Yeah, I think this is pretty bad. It is a single mana, and it does have a way to get rid of the creature once it's on. But now you're spending 4 mana and having to have a specific kind of board presence to be able to do that. I don't like this. I don't. I'm gonna go for a 1 point. I can't. I guess it's got to be higher than that. It is a removal spell for 1 mana, and that's pretty efficient. Even if it's not good, it is efficient. I'll go for a 2.2, but I really don't like this card. I don't know if I've made that clear. Undergrowth Scavenger is 3 and a green for a 0/0 fungus horror, and this creature enters with a number of +1/+1 counters on it equal to the number of creature cards in all graveyards. We had a card somewhat recently, the card that gained you life based on the number of creatures in all graveyards, and it cost the same as this. Well, it cost the same mana value anyway. This is 3 and a green. That other one was 2 and double green. I do like that it's counters and it's not a star. I think some people might argue the star might be better in that it is something that could get bigger over time without you having to do anything else to it. But my argument would be this is also a format that is rife with graveyard hate. So if you had a star creature, pretty easy for your opponent to just wipe out all graveyards with a Relic of Progenitus, and then this creature now dies too to state-based actions, now being a 0/0. With the +1/+1 counters, at least you can get to a point of, okay, this guy comes in with so many counters on him, and then I can even do stuff like proliferate or put even more counters on it, and it continues being a good creature even if everything else goes. The real death knell of this card, though, is it costs 4 mana, and I have to have a very specific board presence in that, well, not board presence exactly, but a graveyard presence, or my opponent has to have a graveyard presence, and I don't like relying on my opponent to have something to fuel my strategy. And it's also, even once it does come in and get the counter, so it's already expensive, and it's expensive, it forces you to jump through hoops, and once it's on the table, it is just kind of a big dumb vanilla idiot. No forms of evasion, no flying, no trample, none of that. And that feels pretty bad too. So I can't in good conscience give this a really good score. There's something kind of interesting about it. I can go as high as a 2.3. Yeah, I think I can go for a 2.3. Serum Visionary. Okay, 2 and a blue for a 2/2 Vidalcan Wizard. When this creature enters, you draw a card and then scry 2. It's called Serum Visionary because it's based on the card Serum Visions, which was originally a not Darksteel, a Fifth Dawn card, right? Go all the way down here to Fifth Dawn. Yeah, so Fifth Dawn, Serum Vision, single blue mana for a sorcery. You draw a card and you scry 2, which sounds pretty darn similar to this guy that enters the battlefield. You draw a card and you scry 2. So it's a body. It's a grizzly bear. It's a 2/2 here that casts Serum Visions when it comes into play. That's kind of cool. Serum Visions doesn't see a whole lot of play because we have other cards that are better. I think you'd prefer a Preordain to a Serum Visions. Preordain has you scry 2 first, and then you draw a card, instead of drawing the card and then scrying 2. There is an argument, though, that drawing the card is nice because you get a card, but then you get to scry 2 after that, so you're setting up your next couple of draws. But more often than not, you prefer the Preordain to set up the right draw, and then you get to actually draw the card that you really want. You might draw a bad card with Serum Visionary. Maybe it's a land and you don't want a land, or maybe it's not a land and you really needed a land. So you'd probably prefer to scry first. So that makes Serum Visions and Serum Visionary by extension not quite as good. This is still okay. It's not a terrible body. It comes down, it draws you a card, it gives you some card selection that way, and it is something you can blink. It is something you can bounce. And, it's from Modern Horizons 3, so obviously it must be busted, right? This is one of the few common cards, at least, from Modern Horizons 3 that isn't so busted. But even still, I think it's a cool, solid card. It doesn't really have a deck that it goes into. It's not going into familiars. It probably could. That's probably the deck that could use it the most. But familiars has a ton of other cards that it would play over this, and it does. The Augur of Bolus and things like that are giving you not just a drawn card and some scries, but giving you a real card selection of getting like a very useful card in your hand when you need it. So I think a lot of those cards just end up being better than Serum Visionary, and cheaper, and have maybe more useful power and toughnesses than just a Grizzly Bear 2/2 out of this. But still, not terrible, and I do have to give it some kind of props, so I'll go with a 3. Solid 3 on that one. Giant Baiting is 2 and a Gruul hybrid, so a red or a green. For a sorcery, create a 4/4 red and green giant warrior creature token with haste, and you exile it at the beginning of the next end step. And this spell also has Conspire, which means as you cast this spell, you may tap 2 untapped creatures you control that share a color with it, so in this case, red or green. And when you do, you copy it. So 3 mana for a 4/4 creature with haste. But you only get it that one turn, because you have to exile it at the beginning of the next end step. Probably pretty underrate, right? Not as sorry. Oh, yeah. It's under the rate that you'd want. Yeah, am I using rate that in the right way that at that point? You're not getting as good of effect as you want for 3 mana, even though a 4/4 for 3 mana sounds really good. A 4/4 for 3 mana for one turn, not quite good enough. The Conspire, though, is interesting because now you can tap a couple of creatures. Maybe you have just a couple of Saproling tokens or a couple 1/1 Goblin tokens or something. And those can tap down to copy this spell. And now you get 2 4/4s. Again, only for one turn, but still 2 4/4s for the price of 3 mana and a couple of tapped little dorks. That's not too bad. That is giving you good value for that rate. Like really good value for that rate. I do kind of wish, I know it doesn't work with this because Conspire just says copy the spell, but I kind of want like a kicker variant that if I did Conspire the spell, I get to keep them. Wouldn't that be fun? You could probably put that in the rules. Like you just put it in the Oracle text there of, exile it at the beginning of the next end step unless you conspired the spell. Or maybe you get to keep one. I don't know. I just kind of want to keep one. Because if you don't get to keep one, I think this card feels kind of bad. Maybe if these things had trample as well as haste, I could be okay with it. If they were kind of like ball lightnings, that would be pretty cool. But when the opponent can also just chump block a couple of times, and then you've not only wasted 3 mana, but you've also tapped down a couple guys that might be able to be blockers for you on the next turn on your opponent's attack step, then I think you feel a little bit cheated. So I don't quite love this, even though I kind of like the idea of where it's going, and I'll give it a 2.6. Next up is Ancient Den. Wow, we're getting more artifact lands. This one is also really darn good. I don't think we've actually done the Mirrodin artifact lands, the original artifact lands. So let's do them today. Ancient Den is an artifact land that taps for white. It comes in untapped. It's an artifact. These all of these see play. Everyone except maybe Tree of Tales, which is the green one. But Seat of the Synod, Great Furnace, Vault of Whispers. Did I say them all? Yeah, Tree of Tales and this. Yeah, Ancient Den. So they're all really good. And Darksteel Citadel, I suppose, also counts. That's the colorless one. That showed up in Darksteel, not Mirrodin, but you know. But these untapped artifact lands are quite good. They are, in many ways, they are just as good as playing a basic land, because again, they come into play untapped, but they are upping your artifact count. And that makes a big difference for a lot of different decks. Obviously, affinity decks that are looking for, you know, the Grixis affinity decks that really want to get to those Mirror Enforcers earlier, or the Utrom monitors and things like that. Ortop Blade also really likes these because it makes your refurbished familiars a lot cheaper. Imagine being able to play a refurbished familiar on turn 2 because you can just play 2 Vault of Whispers, and that's 2 artifacts to reduce your refurbished familiar down to just 2 mana, and now you can play that refurbished familiar, and that makes your next refurbished familiar only cost 1 mana. Wouldn't that be great? Because the refurbished familiar itself is an artifact. You could also just play. You could do the very dirty thing of playing a Vault of Whispers into a Blood Fountain on turn 1, and now you have 3 artifacts on the field. And then the next turn you can play 2 two refurbished familiars if you've got another land in your hand of any type, and obviously 2 refurbished familiars. But that is a pretty deadly turn 2 play that you can do in a handful of different decks. You could do that in Jund Wildfire decks. You can do it in Ortop Blade, and there's some Dimir decks that also do some blinky bouncy stuff that can pull that little trick off too. These lands are great. They work in all sorts of different things. You know, I mentioned the Grixis Affinity. I mentioned Ortop Blade. You know, Boros Synthesizer. These are really good. In fact, these are so good that the meta also pretty much dictates that you need to have some sort of artifact hate in your sideboard, if not your main board. And part of it is you need to be able to take out lands like this to slow down affinity, because affinity is so fast and can be so strong that if you are not taking out these lands and taking out your opponent's mana and lowering their artifact count, you are just going to get rolled over. And we see that these cards are banned in Modern. This cycle is banned in Modern because they are so good. They are really, really oppressive once they get rolling. Are these better than the bridges? I mean, the reason they made the bridges is to kind of show that I mean, they realize, okay, there's a lot of artifact hate happening because of the affinity stuff. So how can we both slow down affinity but also help affinity? And the bridges were the answer of, okay, well, these things come into play tapped, so that does slow your strategy down because you're not getting mana the turn it comes down. But they're also indestructible now, which means that the destroy effects aren't going to work against them, which means your opponent now has to move to exile artifact cards, and those cards are more expensive, less plentiful, and sometimes even not at worse speeds, you know, sorcery speed spells instead of instant speed spells. There are still instant speed exile target artifact, but it's more hoops to jump through. It's not necessarily the easiest, best cards that you can play as an opponent, but you are having to make those plays because now you're worried about the bridges. These are great. I think the bridges, you can argue. I think there's an argument either way of, is it worth it to have these untapped lands that are a little bit more frail, or is it better to have the tapped duels that are duels and also have more resilience by being indestructible? It's a tough call. I kind of go with a coin flip on them. And I said at the beginning of was it this one? Yeah, it was this one where I had the Thornglint Bridge. That was like a 9. I think these are also like a 9. I really don't want to make a choice on which artifact land is better. If you have an opinion, please share it in the comments. I would love to hear it. But let's keep on going. We've got a few more cards left on the day. Sever Soul is 3 and double black for a sorcery. Destroy target non-black creature. It can't be regenerated, and you gain life equal to its toughness. Costs a lot. Sorcery speed. Non-black creature is too narrow for our purposes these days. I think this is pretty bad. I do like gaining the life to the toughness, but now I feel like this rots in my hand most of the time because now I'm waiting to use this on a juicy target. I need to wait until they've got a 7/7 out that I can destroy with this, and I'm not taking out the 1/1 or the 2/2, and I'm probably just letting myself die by not taking out the card that needs to be taken out right now because I'm just waiting. Oh well, I'll get more value if I wait for the big creature, and it's just not very good. The sorcery speed is probably the worst part of the card. The cost is the second worst part of the card, but those two things combined make for a pretty underwhelming removal piece. So I'm going to go with a 2 and move right along to Stab Wound, which is 2 and a black for an enchantment aura that enchants a creature. Enchanted creature gets -2/-2, and at the beginning of the upkeep of enchanted creature's control, at the beginning of the upkeep of the enchanted creature's controller, that player loses 2 life. Very good flavor wise. Like, hey, if you get a Stab Wound, one that's going to hurt, you're going to be lessened in your in both your toughness and your power output. That I've got this injury, I'm handicapped in this way. But then also, stab wounds bleed, and that bleeding is bleeding life. So I really do like the flavor part of it. The card itself, I don't know. It's probably a little too slow in Pauper, and when I say probably, I mean definitely too slow in Pauper. What are you playing this on? Or you have to have a creature. I would say ideally you want to put this on a creature that is medium sized big. We're talking like 3/3s to 5/5s, something like that. And so you want to be able to bring that creature down to size, but you don't want to kill it. You don't want to put this on a 2/2 because then the creature dies and you paid 3 mana to kill a creature. I mean, I guess that's fine, but at sorcery speed, that doesn't feel very good. But you also want to keep the creature alive because then you want to have the stab wound part. You want to have them lose 2 life every turn. And to do that, that creature has to stay on the table, which means you don't want to block it, which means you don't want to attack into it because then your opponent will block it. Like, there's a block with it. There's just, I think it ends up being kind of a bad card, even if I really like the idea of it. And that's a real shame. That's a real shame. Very clever card, but not a very good card, and that disappoints me greatly. We'll go with a 2.1 for that. Dark Maze is 4 and a blue for a 4/5 wall with Defender. You can pay 0 free, and this creature can attack this turn as though it didn't have Defender, but you have to exile it at the beginning of the next end step. Isn't that interesting? That it is. It's kind of cool. Originally from Homelands, so you get a couple different versions of it, and then this 5th edition art that we see now. That's neat. That's neat. It's not good. A 5-mana 4/5, a 5-mana vanilla 4/5. Especially one with Defender. That's a wall at that point. That feels bad. I mean, blue creatures aren't generally very good, so this is kind of in line with blue creatures. But being able to say, okay, well, this turn I can swing in with it. I guess the idea is that in your blue control deck, you can put this down, block a bunch of stuff the opponent has. It being a 4/5, it probably ends up killing a lot of the stuff that it blocks. And then once you've drained your opponent of resources and they don't have a lot on board, now if you just need to get in for those extra points of damage to finish the game, you can turn this into a creature. Well, it's already a creature, but you can get rid of the Defender so it can attack. And then it goes away. It's interesting. It's interesting, but it's not very good. I also don't really quite understand the flavor of this. Like, how is the maze animating itself for a single turn and attacking? Why is a maze a 4 power creature? Not really sure about that. But it's at least not a design I see all the time. So I do want to give it some credit there. We'll go with a like a 2.3. Man, these aren't really good scores, but I guess we've gotten a couple nines this round too. So I don't know. That's what you get with commons. Tuk Tuk Grunts is 4 and a red for a 2/2 Goblin Warrior ally with haste. And whenever this creature or another ally you control enters, you can put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. We were talking about allies not too long ago. This is a bad one. 5 mana for a 2/2, even with haste. That's a really bad rate. And then you get some +1/+1 counters. I guess you even get, it's more like it's a 5 mana 3/3 with haste, because you do get to put a +1/+1 counter on this guy when it enters. That is kind of cool if you have something that cares about modified creatures, or if you have something that's a real proliferate theme, because this is a creature, kind of like Arcbound creatures and some of the other ones that we've seen, that will come into play with a counter on it. So that's actually not, that idea is not bad. This card is still bad. Don't let me be clear. This is not a good Magic card. Even if you are in an ally heavy deck and you're able to play a couple allies on a turn and this thing can get big, it's still, it's just a big dumb guy. And the haste part only matters the turn it comes into play for the most part. If you're playing against Gingerbread or something, I suppose it still comes into play. But eh, yeah, it's fun to say Tuk Tuk Grunts, and ally stuff is interesting, but the card itself, I don't think is quite good enough for the Pauper format. And as I said with the other ally card that we saw that was much better than this, is that the allies is just not a deck in Pauper right now either, and that decreases its value even more. So we'll go with a. I think I'm just gonna go with a 2. I don't feel like dipping down into the ones. That feels a little punitive, but this is still something that's not very good. Adventuring Gear will be our final card of the day. It's a single mana for an artifact equipment with landfall. Whenever a land you control enters, equipped creature gets +2/+2 until end of turn, and it equips for 1. So I don't like this because it is nothing essentially. If it doesn't do anything the turn it comes into play unless you're now spending even more mana. It doesn't automatically equip to a creature, which you'll see a lot of modern equipment do. But without guaranteeing any stats, this is sometimes just a 1 mana artifact that just sits on your table. And even if you're able to attach it to a creature, it can still sometimes just be nothing. If you don't have a land to play that turn, you get nothing. That and most of the time, unless you have a way of cheating out multiple lands in a single turn, you're only going to get +2/+2. I It just feels so conditional to me. It also feels pretty narrow on the times that I'm able to play this card, or the times that I'm able to get use out of this card. And I really don't like an artifact that just kind of sits on the table and does nothing. I don't mind an artifact that sits on the table and can be activated at some point, like blood tokens or clue tokens or a blood fountain, or any other sort of things that you're like, okay, it's just there. It's a resource that I could always take advantage of. This is not really, on a turn where I don't have a land to play. This just sits out there and stares at me, and I hate it. I hate it for that. So I don't think this is a particularly good card. I'm gonna go for I think I'm gonna go for like a 1.5. I really, really don't like this card. Well, bit of a bummer to end on, but that is where we will end. I will see you next time on Common Knowledge. Till then.